The challenge of Void Station. The transparent dome of Void Station's central observatory offered an uninterrupted view of the swirling nebula that surrounded it. Colors no human eye had ever witnessed before humanity reached the stars danced across the vast expanse. Purples deeper than Earth's oceans, blues brighter than its skies, and reds more vibrant than its sunsets. Maya Chen pressed her palm against the reinforced glass, feeling the slight vibration of the station's gravitational stabilizers. As the only human in the advanced interspecies engineering program, she often found herself here during break periods, seeking solitude among the stars rather than uncomfortable silence among her peers. Appreciating the void again, Engineer Chen. The voice came from behind her, melodic, but with a distinct artificial quality that marked all translator devices. Maya turned to face Instructor Clevexian, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that shifted colors with his moods. Currently, he displayed a neutral blue-green. His 4 eyes blinked in unnervingly perfect synchronicity. "Just collecting my thoughts, Instructor," Maya replied, straightening her standard-issue gray uniform. It was identical to those worn by the other 23 students, yet somehow Maya always felt hers stood out, a visual reminder of her difference. "The void offers much to contemplate," Clevexian said, moving to stand beside her. "Your species has a curious fascination with empty spaces. Most other civilizations find them disturbing." Maya smiled slightly. "Humans see potential in emptiness, a blank canvas waiting for creation. An interesting perspective." Clevexian's skin rippled with a pattern Maya had learned indicated thoughtfulness. "Perhaps that explains your approach to engineering problems." Before Maya could ask what he meant, the station's communication system activated with a soft chime. "All engineering program participants report to Assembly Hall Delta for a special announcement. Attendance is mandatory." Clevexian gestured toward the exit. "After you, Engineer Chen." The assembly hall was already filling with students when Maya arrived. She recognized all the species represented: the silicon-based Tikari with their crystalline appendages, the massive, 6-limbed Groovian engineers whose strength allowed them to manipulate heavy machinery without assistance, the Vulturi with their naturally evolved computational organs visible beneath translucent skin. Each species possessed biological advantages that made them naturally suited for engineering work. And then there was Maya, 5 feet 7 inches of standard human biology. No enhanced strength, no built-in computational abilities, no specialized appendages, just opposable thumbs and a brain evolved to solve problems on a primitive planet. She took a seat in the back row, ignoring the subtle shifting of bodies away from her. After 6 months on the station, she'd grown accustomed to the isolation. Station Director Amonisk, a venerable Zelvan whose age-ridged exoskeleton marked centuries of experience, stepped onto the central platform. The room fell silent immediately. "Engineers," Amonisk began, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into standard galactic language. "Void Station exists to identify and nurture the finest engineering minds from across the federated systems. For generations, we have trained specialists who design and maintain the critical infrastructure that supports interstellar civilization." Maya had heard this speech before. It was practically the station's mission statement, but something in the director's tone suggested this wasn't merely a routine address. Tomorrow marks the beginning of this cycle's critical systems assessment. As is tradition, each participant will demonstrate their engineering proficiency through practical application rather than theoretical examination. A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. The assessment was legendary, a real-world engineering challenge that could make or break careers. Those who excelled often received positions at the most prestigious research facilities or engineering firms in the galaxy. "This cycle's challenge," Amonisk continued, "will test your ability to repair and optimize life support systems under pressure. Each participant will be assigned to a separate section of the station's outer ring, where you will be tasked with restoring functionality to deliberately compromised environmental controls." Maya felt her heart rate increase. Life support systems were notoriously complex, requiring integration of atmospheric regulation, temperature control, water recycling, and waste management. Even the most advanced automated systems required occasional manual intervention, which was precisely why engineers were still essential despite centuries of technological advancement. You will have 24 standard hours to complete your repairs. You may use only the tools and materials available within your assigned section. External communication will be disabled, and assistance from instructors is prohibited. Director Amonisk's exoskeleton clicked as she shifted position. This is not merely a test of knowledge, but of resourcefulness, adaptability, and innovation, qualities essential to engineering excellence regardless of species. The emphasis on the final words wasn't lost on Maya. Was it her imagination, or had the director looked directly at her? Section assignments will be transmitted to your personal devices at 600 tomorrow. Rest well, engineers. You will need your full faculties for the challenge ahead. As the assembly dispersed, Maya remained seated, processing the announcement. Around her, conversations buzzed with excitement and strategy. The T'Kari engineers were already discussing thermal regulation algorithms, while the Groovians compared notes on pressure valve maintenance techniques. Concerned, Engineer Chen. Maya looked up to find Instructor Klovexian observing her, his skin now pulsing with amber curiosity. Realistic, she replied. Every species here has natural advantages for engineering work. The Volturi can perform complex calculations mentally faster than I can input them into a device. The T'Kari can withstand extreme temperatures that would kill me instantly. True, Klovexian acknowledged. Yet Void Station accepted your application nonetheless. The Admissions Council must have seen something valuable in human engineering perspective. Maya sighed. Or perhaps they needed to fill a diversity quota for diplomatic reasons. A cynical view. Klovexian's skin darkened slightly. I've reviewed your work, Engineer Chen. Your solutions are unorthodox by our standards, but consistently effective. Where others see limitations, you see alternatives. It's quite remarkable. Before Maya could respond, a harsh voice cut through their conversation. Instructor, are humans permitted assistance prior to the assessment? That seems contrary to regulations. The speaker was Drex, a Volturi whose translucent cranium pulsed with neural activity. His tone carried the unmistakable edge of disapproval. I was merely discussing philosophical approaches to engineering challenges. Student Drex. Klovexian replied smoothly. A practice permitted, even encouraged, among all participants. Drex's skin flushed with patterns indicating skepticism. Of course, instructor. I simply wish to ensure fairness, given the considerable disadvantages some participants face. His 4 eyes flicked meaningfully toward Maya. Your concern for equitable competition is noted, Klovexian said, a hint of coldness entering his translated voice. Though I would suggest that presuming disadvantage based on species demonstrates a lack of imagination unbecoming of an engineer. With that subtle rebuke, Klovexian nodded politely to Maya and departed, leaving her alone with Drex, whose skin now displayed patterns of irritation. Do not mistake the instructor's courtesy for confidence in your abilities. Human, Drex said quietly. This assessment requires precision, speed, and efficiency, qualities your species achieved only through crude technology, never biology. Maya met his gaze steadily. Engineering isn't about what you're born with, Drex. It's about what you do with what you have. An admirable sentiment, he replied, the translator unable to fully capture the condescension in his tone. Perhaps it comforts your species to believe so. As he walked away, Maya turned back to the viewport, watching the swirling colors of the nebula. Tomorrow would prove challenging, not just because of the assessment itself, but because she knew every other participant viewed her as an inevitable failure. The human experiment, doomed to disappoint. Maya took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. She hadn't come this far to be intimidated. If she couldn't match the biological advantages of her competitors, she would have to rely on what humans had always used to survive: creativity, adaptability, and the stubborn refusal to accept impossibility. The lights in her quarters dimmed automatically at 2200 hours, but Maya remained awake, reviewing schematics of standard life support systems on her datapad. The basic principles were universal. Air needed to be filtered and replenished, water purified and recycled, temperature regulated, waste processed. The specifics varied by station section and species requirements, but the fundamentals remained consistent. What troubled her wasn't the theory. She'd studied life support engineering extensively before applying to the program. It was the practical application under unknown conditions that concerned her. How could she compete with beings who could innately sense atmospheric composition or manipulate materials with specialized appendages? As sleep finally began to overtake her, a stray thought crossed her mind. The assessment wasn't just about restoring systems to standard parameters. It was about optimization, making things work better than before. Perhaps that's where her human perspective might prove valuable. Maybe, just maybe, her perceived disadvantage could become her greatest strength. Unexpected crisis. Maya's alarm chimed at 500, rousing her from shallow sleep. Her datapad was illuminated with a notification. Section R17, Outer Ring. Report at 600 for assessment initiation. She showered quickly, donned her uniform, and packed her personal toolkit, a birthday gift from her father before she left Earth. The multipurpose instruments weren't particularly advanced by galactic standards, but they were reliable and familiar in her hands. The station's corridors were quieter than usual as she made her way to the transport hub. Most students were likely taking private routes to their assigned sections, avoiding interaction before the competition began. Maya appreciated the solitude. It gave her time to mentally prepare. At precisely 600, she reached Section R17's entry point. A service lift would take her to the outer ring, where she'd be sealed in until the assessment concluded, or she signaled for emergency extraction, an automatic failure condition. Instructor Klevexian was waiting beside the lift, his skin displaying professional neutrality. "Engineer Chen," he greeted her. "Your section parameters have been uploaded to the local terminal. The life support systems have been disabled according to assessment protocols. Your task is to restore full functionality within 24 hours, optimizing performance where possible." Maya nodded. "Understood, instructor. Remember, you are permitted to use only materials and tools found within the section." His eyes fixed on her personal toolkit with mild disapproval. Maya hesitated, then reluctantly placed the kit on a nearby shelf. "Of course. Good luck, Engineer Chen." Was there a hint of genuine encouragement in his translated voice? "The observation team will be monitoring all sections remotely. Signal if you encounter genuine danger." The lift doors opened, and Maya stepped inside. As they closed, she caught a final glimpse of Klevexian, his skin now rippling with a pattern she hadn't seen before. Anticipation, perhaps, or concern. The descent to Section R17 took less than a minute. When the doors opened, Maya was greeted by darkness and stale air. Emergency lighting activated automatically, casting the space in an eerie red glow. She stepped out, and the lift doors sealed behind her with a definitive hiss. For the next 24 hours, she was on her own. Section R17 was a standard outer ring compartment, approximately 200 square meters of space, divided into maintenance areas, storage, and a small habitation zone. Under normal circumstances, it would house monitoring equipment for the station's external sensors and serve as temporary quarters for maintenance crews. Currently, it was cold, dark, and rapidly becoming unsuitable for human life. Maya immediately moved to the environmental control panel, confirming what she already knew. All systems were offline. Atmospheric recyclers, temperature regulation, water purification, waste processing, everything had been disabled. The emergency lights were operating on an independent power source, but that was all. She had perhaps 4 hours before the air became unbreathable, less if the temperature continued to drop. The assessment had officially begun. Maya was methodically examining the atmospheric recycler when a violent shudder ran through the station. She grabbed a support beam to steady herself as alarms suddenly blared to life. Warning: station integrity compromised. Micrometeor impact detected in sectors R12 through R20. Emergency protocols engage. Maya froze. This couldn't be part of the assessment. The station maintained sophisticated defense systems to detect and neutralize space debris before it came anywhere near the structure. Another impact rattled the section, stronger than the first. The lights flickered, and a new alarm joined the cacophony. Critical damage to outer hull detected. Section emergency seals activating. Stand clear of bulkheads. Heavy metal barriers slid into place over the main doors and maintenance hatches. Maya realized with a chill that she was now completely sealed in, not just as part of the assessment, but as a genuine safety measure. The communication panel beside the environmental controls lit up unexpectedly. Maya rushed to it, pressing the receiver. "This is Engineer Chen in Section R17. What's happening?" Static crackled before Instructor Klevexian's voice came through, distorted but recognizable. "Engineer Chen, the station has encountered an unexpected micrometeor shower. Our defensive systems were compromised. Multiple outer sections have sustained damage." "Is this part of the assessment?" Maya demanded, though she already suspected the answer. "No." The instructor's tone was grim. "The damage is real. The observation team is attempting to coordinate emergency response, but communication systems are failing station-wide." Maya's mind raced through implications. What about the other students? Are they secure? All participants were in their assigned sections when the impacts occurred. They should be protected by emergency seals, but he hesitated. Several sections are reporting critical damage to life support infrastructure beyond the planned assessment parameters, including R17. More static than unknown. Our sensor data is incomplete. The good news, Engineer Chen, is that your task remains fundamentally the same. Restore your section's life support systems. The stakes, however, have become considerably higher. Maya took a deep breath. Understood. How soon can we expect rescue? The response was delayed, fragmented by interference. Least 12 hours. Nearest support vessel. Continue with repairs. Survival priority. Then the communication cut off entirely. Maya stared at the silent panel for several seconds, processing this dramatic shift in circumstances. What had begun as a challenging test had transformed into a genuine survival situation. She was trapped in a damaged section of a station under attack from space debris, with failing life support and no guarantee of rescue. And she wasn't the only one. 23 other students faced the same predicament, scattered throughout the outer ring. Another impact shook the section, smaller than the previous ones but still concerning. Maya steadied herself against the wall, then moved purposefully toward the maintenance access. If rescue was 12 hours away at minimum, she needed to get life support functioning immediately. The access panel came off easily, revealing the complex network of systems that maintained habitable conditions. Maya quickly identified the central processor, disabled as part of the assessment, and the backup power routing that should have activated automatically during an emergency. Both were damaged, not just disabled. This was definitely not part of the original test. A glint of metal caught her eye, a jagged fragment embedded in the circuitry. She carefully extracted it with a pair of insulated tongs from a nearby tool cabinet. The fragment was small, no larger than her thumbnail, but it had punched through the outer hull and several layers of shielding before lodging in the critical systems. Maya examined the damage more thoroughly. The processor was beyond repair with available tools, and the power routing was compromised in multiple locations. Standard repair protocols would be useless. She needed to think differently. Moving to the storage area, Maya began inventorying available resources. Standard repair materials were present: conductive gel, patch sealant, spare wiring, but nothing that could replace the sophisticated components that had been destroyed. As the temperature continued to drop and the air grew thinner, Maya felt the first stirrings of real concern. The other students, with their specialized biology, might have natural advantages in surviving these conditions. The Terry could withstand extreme cold. The Vulture could operate with minimal oxygen. She, however, was entirely dependent on functioning life support. Maya closed her eyes, forcing herself to focus. What would a human engineer do? What had human engineers always done when faced with impossible situations? They improvised. The standard approaches wouldn't work. She couldn't repair the systems as designed. But perhaps she could create something new from the components available, something that fulfilled the same function through different means. With renewed determination, Maya began disassembling everything she could access. From the habitation area, she collected the sleeping pod's environmental controls. From storage, she gathered chemical reagents used for system cleaning. From the maintenance bay, she salvaged sensor arrays and communication components. Hours passed as she worked, her breath forming clouds in the increasingly frigid air. Her fingers grew numb, and she periodically had to stop to warm them against the emergency lights, which generated minimal heat. Twice more, impacts shook the station, though less violently than the initial barrage. Each time, Maya paused, waiting for structural failure that never came. The station's construction was holding, at least for now. As she worked, a new concern emerged. The air quality was deteriorating faster than anticipated. Without functioning recyclers, carbon dioxide was building up, causing her to feel lightheaded and nauseated. She needed air, and she needed it soon. Maya looked around the section desperately. There had to be something she'd missed, some resource she hadn't considered. Her gaze fell on a maintenance hatch in the floor, an access point to the conduit system that ran between sections. It was sealed, of course, like all other exits, but unlike the main doors, which were designed for humanoid passage, this hatch served purely mechanical functions. And mechanical systems, Maya knew, often had manual overrides. She knelt beside the hatch, examining its locking mechanism. It was sophisticated but fundamentally simple in principle, a series of clamps held in place by electromagnetic forces. With power diverted from emergency systems, those clamps could be released. It was risky. Opening the hatch would connect her section to the conduit system, potentially exposing her to vacuum if those tunnels had been compromised. But without air, she would die anyway. Maya made her decision. Carefully, she rerouted power from the emergency lights to the hatch release. The section plunged into darkness, illuminated only by the soft glow of her improvised control panel. She held her breath as the hatch clamps disengaged with a soft click. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the heavy metal cover just enough to peek inside. No explosive decompression occurred. No alarm sounded. Instead, a rush of cool, fresh air flowed into the section. Maya inhaled deeply, relief flooding through her. The conduit system was intact and, more importantly, maintained its own atmospheric pressure. It wasn't a permanent solution. The air would grow stale eventually. But it bought her precious time. With renewed focus, she returned to her improvised life support system. If the conduits had air, they might have other resources she could tap into. She just had to be clever enough to access them without compromising station safety. As she worked, a thought occurred to her. If her section connected to the conduit system, then logically, so did every other section. And if those conduits maintained atmosphere, they might provide a way to help the others. Unconventional thinking. 8 hours into the crisis, Maya's section had transformed from a failing life support zone into what could only be described as organized chaos. Components from various systems lay disassembled across the floor, connected by improvised wiring, and sealed with patch material never intended for such purposes. At the center of it all stood Maya's creation, a hybrid life support system, unlike anything in the station's technical manuals. Unable to repair the sophisticated atmospheric recyclers, she had instead constructed a chemical air scrubber using materials from cleaning supplies and medical kits. Carbon dioxide was absorbed through a catalytic reaction, while oxygen was slowly generated through the controlled decomposition of hydrogen peroxide found in the medical stores. Temperature regulation came from rewired heating elements in the sleeping pod, strategically placed to create convection currents that distributed warmth throughout the section. The system was crude, inefficient, and would eventually exhaust its resources, but it worked. Most importantly, it had stabilized her immediate environment, giving her time to address the larger problem: isolation. Maya knelt beside the open maintenance hatch, studying the complex network of conduits visible below. These tunnels formed the station's circulatory system, carrying power, data, and atmosphere between sections. They weren't designed for human traversal. The average diameter was barely half a meter, but they offered something potentially more valuable: connection. Using a portable scanner salvaged from the sensor array, Maya mapped the nearest junction points. If her calculations were correct, she could access the central distribution hub for sections R15 through R20 without leaving her section. From there, she might establish communication with other trapped students and possibly help them. A distant impact shuddered through the station, smaller than the previous ones, but a stark reminder that the danger hadn't passed. Maya checked her makeshift atmospheric monitor. Oxygen levels were stable but would begin declining again within hours. She needed to expand her solution or find a way to increase efficiency. With determined focus, she began extending control wires down into the conduit system, carefully following the schematics displayed on her reconfigured datapad. The work was delicate and slow, complicated by poor lighting and the awkward angle. As she worked, Maya reflected on the irony of her situation. The very characteristics that had made her feel inferior among her alien peers, her lack of specialized biology, her reliance on tools rather than innate abilities, had now become advantages. Without preconceptions about proper engineering solutions, she was free to improvise in ways the others might never consider. The wire she was feeding into the conduit suddenly caught on something. Maya frowned, adjusting her angle to see better. There, barely visible in the shadows, was an unexpected junction box, not marked on any schematic she'd reviewed. Curious, she redirected her scanner. The readings were confusing. The box appeared to be an auxiliary control node for environmental systems, but its configuration was unlike anything she'd seen in the station's technical documentation. After a moment's hesitation, Maya decided to investigate further. Using a small probe tool, she carefully opened the junction box's access panel. Inside was a marvel of engineering, a compact, self-contained system that appeared to monitor and regulate atmospheric flow throughout the conduit network. But why would such sophisticated equipment be hidden away, unmarked on official schematics? The answer came in a sudden flash of insight. This wasn't part of the original station design. It was an addition, perhaps installed by maintenance crews who had faced similar emergencies in the past and created their own solutions. Maya's pulse quickened. If she could interface with this system, she might be able to redirect atmospheric flow from less damaged sections to those in critical condition, essentially creating a distributed life support network using the station's own conduits. It was risky. Tampering with unlisted systems could cause cascading failures, but the alternative was potentially watching her fellow students suffocate in isolated sections. Decision made, Maya began the delicate process of integrating her makeshift control system with the junction box. She worked methodically, tracing circuits and identifying control parameters before making any connections. 3 hours later, sweat beading on her forehead, despite the cool temperature, Maya connected the final circuit. Her improvised interface flickered to life, displaying a crude but functional map of the conduit system, connecting 6 sections of the outer ring, including her own. The data streaming across her screen told a grim story. 2 sections showed critical atmospheric failures, R19 and R16, while the others maintained minimal life support. If the occupants of those critical sections were still alive, they wouldn't be for long without intervention. Maya took a deep breath and activated her interface. Commands flowed through the jury-rigged connection, instructing the hidden system to redistribute atmospheric resources through the conduits. According to her calculations, this would lower air quality in all sections slightly but would bring the critical sections back to survivable levels. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Maya checked her connections, verified her commands, and was preparing to try again when the interface suddenly came alive with new data. It was working. Atmospheric pressure in the critical sections was rising, while the others showed only minimal decrease. The hidden system was more efficient than she had anticipated, suggesting it had been designed specifically for emergency redistribution. A soft chime from the communication panel startled her. Maya scrambled over, praying the system had been restored. "This is Engineer Chen in Section R17. Do you read me?" Static crackled. Then a voice broke through, not from station control, but from another section. "Chen, this is Drex in R16. How are you transmitting? Our systems are down." Maya felt a surge of relief. The Volturi student was alive, though he sounded weaker than normal. "I've established a connection through the maintenance conduits," she explained quickly. "I've also managed to redirect some atmospheric support to your section. Are you all right?" A pause then. "I am. Functioning." Atmospheric pressure was critical. "It has improved in the last few minutes." His translator conveyed confusion. "You did this. How?" "Long explanation," Maya replied. "Are there others you can contact?" "The communication relay I'm using has limited range." "Negative. All standard channels are down." Drex's voice strengthened slightly. "Your intervention was timely. My species can tolerate low oxygen, but we were approaching critical threshold." Coming from Drex, this was as close to gratitude as Maya expected. "Can you access your environmental controls? I've sent basic instructions through the conduit system. If you follow them, you might be able to stabilize your section independently." "Attempting now." The transmission went silent for several minutes before returning. "Instructions received. Implementation underway. This approach is unorthodox." Maya couldn't help a small smile. Sometimes unorthodox is all we have. Over the next few hours, Maya expanded her improvised network, establishing contact with 4 of the 5 other sections in her conduit cluster. Only R19 remained silent, despite the atmospheric readings indicating someone should be alive there. Each connection brought new information and new challenges. The Takeri engineers in R15 had survived the temperature drop, but couldn't repair their atmospheric systems due to damaged manipulator tools. Maya taught them through adapting her chemical scrubber design to their environment. The Groovian in R18 had maintained life support, but suffered structural damage that threatened to breach the hull. With Maya's guidance, he reinforced the weakened sections using an improvised application of patch sealant and framework from interior partitions. Each solution was imperfect, temporary, and completely outside standard engineering protocols, and each saved lives. 12 hours into the crisis, Maya sat back from her workstation, exhausted but satisfied. Her section had become the hub of a small, fragile network of survivors, all working together to maintain their interconnected life support system until rescue arrived. The communication panel chimed again. Maya expected another update from one of the connected sections, but instead, a familiar voice broke through the static. "Engineer Chen, this is Instructor Klevexian. Do you read me?" Maya scrambled to the panel. "Yes, Instructor. I read you clearly. Your life signs are being monitored. You appear to be maintaining stable conditions despite significant damage to your section. How are you accomplishing this?" Maya glanced at her chaotic creation. "I built an alternative life support system using available materials. Then I discovered access to the maintenance conduit network and established connections with 5 other sections. We've created a distributed support system sharing resources and solutions." Silence followed, longer than transmission lag could explain. "Then, you connected the sections through the maintenance conduits. That network isn't rated for life support distribution." "With respect, Instructor, it is now," Maya replied. "There was an unlisted control system already installed in the junction nodes. I just repurposed it. Another long pause. Engineer Chen. The rescue vessel is still 8 hours out. Station integrity is holding, but internal systems continue to degrade. Can your network maintain life support until then? Maya consulted her monitors. Yes, for the connected sections, but I'm still getting no response from R19, even though atmospheric readings suggest habitability. Someone may be injured. R19 is occupied by Engineer Trevin. Zelvin. Klovexian's voice conveyed concern. Their species is highly resistant to vacuum, but vulnerable to thermal shock. If the temperature dropped too rapidly. Hibernation state, Maya realized. They might be alive but unresponsive. Precisely. Without intervention, they may not survive until rescue arrives. Maya considered the problem. The conduits are too small for physical passage between sections. But if I could extend the thermal regulation system to R19 specifically, it might raise the temperature enough to revive Engineer Trevin. Such manipulation would require precise control you cannot possibly have with improvised equipment, Klovexian objected. Maya's eyes drifted to a component she'd salvaged but not yet used, a neural interface module from the section's diagnostic system. It was designed to allow engineers to directly control station systems through thought commands, providing greater precision than manual input. It was also, technically, forbidden to human students due to compatibility concerns. I have an idea, Maya said slowly, but it involves using equipment I'm not officially cleared for. The instructor's response was immediate. Engineer Chen, all assessment restrictions are suspended during this emergency. Do whatever is necessary to preserve life. Maya nodded, though Klovexian couldn't see her. Understood. I'll establish thermal support to R19 within the hour. As she disconnected, Maya turned to the neural interface module. The device was designed for vulturine neural structures, with their naturally evolved computational organs. Human brains worked differently, more associative, less structured. The interface would be uncomfortable at best, dangerous at worst, but a life depended on it. With careful precision, Maya integrated the module into her control system and fitted the contact points to her temples. The connection felt like ice against her skin, then a sharp tingling that penetrated her skull. Taking a deep breath, she activated the interface. Information flooded her consciousness. Raw data streams, control parameters, system status reports. It was overwhelming, disorienting, a torrent of information her brain wasn't designed to process directly. Maya gasped, nearly pulling the interface away. But instead of retreating, she forced herself to focus, to impose human patterns on the alien data structure. Where the system expected sequential processing, she created associative links. Where it demanded binary decisions, she introduced gradients. Slowly, painfully, the chaotic data resolved into a coherent mental model. Her perception of the conduit system, the atmospheric flows, the thermal distribution across 6 interconnected sections. And there, in R19, the faint life sign of the hibernating Zelvin engineer. With careful mental commands, Maya redirected thermal energy from her own section toward R19, creating a gradual warming pattern designed to safely revive Trevin from suspended animation without causing thermal shock. The process was delicate, requiring constant adjustment as conditions changed. Maya lost track of time, her consciousness divided between her physical presence in R17 and her extended perception across the network she created. How long she maintained the interface, she couldn't say. But eventually, a new signal appeared in her awareness. Movement in R19. Trevin was stirring. With tremendous effort, Maya shaped a communication through the neural interface, transmitting directly to the environmental controls in R19. Treven AKTI Ahi emergency protocol alpha. If the Zelvin engineer was conscious enough to recognize the standard emergency activation code, they would be able to stabilize their own section. Minutes passed. Then, miraculously, R19's systems began coming online, not fully restored, but functional enough to maintain life support. Treven had received her message and was responding. Maya carefully disengaged from the neural interface, the separation causing a sharp pain behind her eyes. She slumped forward, exhausted but triumphant. All 6 sections were now stabilized. They would survive until rescue arrived. As consciousness began to fade, Maya had one final thought. The assessment had been designed to test their ability to repair systems according to established protocols. Instead, they had created something entirely new, a human solution to an impossible problem. The human touch. Maya awoke to the soft hum of properly functioning environmental systems. For a moment, she thought she'd been rescued, transported to the station's medical bay while unconscious. Then her vision cleared, and she recognized her surroundings. Section R-17, still sealed, still isolated, but different. The chaos of her improvised systems had been refined, organized. Connections that had been held together with patch sealant were now properly sealed. Wiring that had dangled precariously was neatly bundled and secured. Her makeshift control panel glowed with steady lights rather than flickering uncertainly. Most surprising of all, the neural interface module she'd used was now properly mounted on a support stand, its connections modified with what appeared to be cushioned contact points. "You have been unconscious for approximately 3 hours, Engineer Chen." The voice came from the communication panel, clearer than before. Maya recognized it immediately. "Drex, how are you transmitting so clearly?" "I followed your design principles to improve the conduit communication network," the Volturi student replied. His tone, even through the translator, conveyed a mixture of reluctance and respect. "The others have done the same with various systems you initiated." Maya struggled to sit up, wincing at the headache that lingered from her use of the neural interface. "The others? You've been communicating." "Yes. Your conduit network provided the foundation. We have expanded it considerably." A pause. "Engineer Treven from Section R-19 regained consciousness thanks to your thermal intervention. They have since applied Zelvan thermal regulation principles to stabilize all connected sections." Maya moved to her control panel, examining the modifications. Where her original design had been functional but crude, this version showed sophistication and refinement, the principles she'd established enhanced by specialized knowledge from each species. "This is incredible," she murmured. "How did you coordinate all this while I was unconscious?" "We used the neural interface pathway you established," Drex explained. "Not directly. Most species cannot tolerate direct neural connection as you attempted, but as a data transmission medium." It was inspired. The reluctant admiration in his voice made Maya smile despite her headache. "And the rescue vessel?" "Still en route. Estimated arrival in 4 hours, 27 minutes. Drex hesitated. "Station control has reestablished limited communication. They are impressed with our survival initiative." Before Maya could respond, the panel chimed again, and another voice joined the conversation. "Engineer Chen, this is Treven from R-19. The Zelvan's voice was deep, resonant even through the translator. "I owe you my life. My species enters protective hibernation when exposed to extreme cold, but without controlled rewarming, I would not have survived." "I'm just glad you're all right," Maya replied sincerely. "I wasn't sure the thermal gradient would be gentle enough."